All right. Thank you guys so much for coming for our 502 meeting. I am hoping that we can not only talk about a few things that I've noticed were kind of coming up in the discussion boards, which, by the way, guys, you're doing an awesome job on. I really appreciate all the conversation and questions that are happening with all of that. I really can't say that enough, because at this point in the week, I've had other courses where they haven't been having this much conversation, and this is super helpful for me to know where you're at with what you're thinking and what you're struggling with and that kind of thing. One of the things I probably can't emphasize enough is to please, please, please do reach out to me or my colleagues at the library, because we really are more than happy to help you walk through this stuff. I know it sounds really, really sick, but we enjoy this. That's one of the reasons we went to school for this. So we actually really encourage you guys to let us know when you're having trouble. And I know that's part of the reason for this course, or for this portion of your course, but I can't emphasize enough that, you know, the learning and the growing with this isn't going to stop today. And this is something that we want you to be able to take forward with you into all of your other classes, with both this and with other courses, and even into other areas of your life as you're doing research for your work. So I really hope that we can address some of those questions that have arisen, as well as just being able to ask any questions that come up today and in the future. Hi, Rob. Thank you so much. I'm so glad
thank you. Yeah, I finally figured it out. Thank you.
Not a problem. I'm really glad that you and another student have been mentioning to me the issue, because I think this goes back to the whole clutter thing. Was yours routed into the clutter box?
I did not look in the clutter box, but I looked through everything else, and I have no idea. I don't recall seeing that part of the email. I'm
gonna chat with IT about it, because I know Christina's was routed into clutter, and it's a new thing with Office 365 that I think is causing problems for a lot of people.
And that's what I have. I did download the latest version, but anyway, I'm here. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you haven't missed much. We're just getting started with intros, so
okay,
that's where we're at right now. Just mentioning that we are recording the session so people can come back and watch it, especially for those who may not be able to be in attendance today. I want to cover a few new things, but I want to start out first with talking about some of the things I've been seeing pop up in the boards with questions, as well as any questions that you brought with you that may not be represented on the board. So I do want to go down through some of these comments, but did you guys have any pressing issues you wanted to cover right now, like before I start getting into some of the things I've been seeing? And if you don't, that's okay.
No.
Totally fine. No. All right. So we'll get started with this. First of all, thank you guys so much for the feedback on the website. I am glad that by and large, it's been a good experience for all of you. That's thanks to my colleague, Amy. There are 4 librarians. I think you guys saw that in one of my previous presentations, in whether in the 060 or in this course. I think I introduced my colleagues, but Robbie Bolton is our director. There's myself, the online and distance learning librarian. And then there's Karen Parsons, InfoLit and Reference, and then Amy James is Emerging Technology. Now, all of us are happy to answer anybody's questions. So you don't have to let the titles, you know, throw you off or anything like that, but that just kind of gives you an idea where our specializations happen to be. Each of us is also a liaison to different departments, but we serve all students and are happy to help. But I have to give kudos to Amy. She's the one who has streamlined our website quite a bit since she came. She joined us in 2013 and did a major overhaul. I appreciate the feedback, because she's also looking for ways to make it better. We'll be conducting a usability study here within the next year or so. So if you do have any problems that you run into with the site, you know, drop her a line or let me know, and I'll be happy to pass that on to her. Kind of glancing through some of my notes I made. If you find yourself, I know that some of you, everybody's in a different place with research. Some of you have had a lot of experience. Rob, I think it's awesome that you got access to that medical library.
Yes.
And I know not everybody has that. Not everybody's comfortable with research. And so whether Rob has advanced questions or some of you have beginner questions, once again, I can't emphasize enough to, you know, give me a call and walk through this. And if you leave the session today or next week or in the future, and you find yourself feeling super overwhelmed by all this, we can set up a one-on-one session like this. And we can have a discussion about your particular issues, maybe a research project you're working on with some issues. Just let me know, and certainly we will be more than happy to work that out with you. And you may find that especially helpful as we get into like some of your advanced capstone type projects. One of my leading departments is the nursing division, and I have some of them who email me individually to talk about like research topics, strategies for research, Some of them just want an idea of some additional words and formats and things like that that they can use. So hopefully you kind of get the sense that we're here to answer a variety of questions or to get you in touch with people who would better answer certain things. So yeah, try not to let it overwhelm you. I know that it's easier said than done, because this is like learning another language on top of everything else you're doing if you're not familiar with it. I totally get that. But I do want you to walk away with the sense of, hey, I've got a lifeline out there. So do yourself a favor, grab yourself your favorite beverage, grab a coffee. Try to, as much as you can, try to relax when you do this, because it's stressful. When you walk to a database and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, that makes you feel that much more stressed. So do what you got to do to make yourself feel comfortable. And if you're sitting for 15 minutes and you're running into nothing but brick walls, hit us up and we'll be happy to walk through that with you. I'm probably sounds like I'm belaboring the point, but I can't stress it enough, because I've had students call me like, hey, you know what? I've been searching for 6 hours and I'm about ready to quit school. I've had calls like that before, and we certainly don't want you to feel that way. So please do reach out. Both Wally and I are happy to help and want you guys to succeed, truly. I am so glad to hear, too, that for those of you who have gotten a chance to kind of go through the help files and tutorials as well as this week's stuff, there were some comments that the help videos have been helpful, which I'm super glad to hear. I think it was you, Rob, that had found the
tutorials.
Yes.
I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, the graduate.
Yes.
Yes.
My colleague Karen, in conjunction with Terry Pardee from, I want to say, the psychology department, they put those together, and they are certainly applicable for more than just Terry's division. If you guys would like a direct link posted to that, I certainly can, just for you to peruse through. It's not something you're going to be tested on. It certainly goes into some more advanced discussions, and may feel more appropriate once you get a little bit more used to, if you're somebody who's sort of a novice at the searching, you may want to look at that a little bit later, and this feels a little bit more comfortable to you. But yeah, I'm really glad. Feel free to use any of those, and I want to encourage you too, that if you find there's a topic that you would find better explained via a video tutorial that we have not covered, please do let me know, because we know that we want to grow our tutorials, but when we have our heads stuck in library land, we don't always know what's as useful for everyone else. So if you find something, whether it's covering the journal title search, which I actually do want to do a video on that, just drop me a line and let me know if there's something we should add to our collection and make it available for everybody. I have some people commenting, and I wanted to touch on this right away so that hopefully we can get you guys the help that you're looking for. Some people had indicated that they were coming across requests for payment for an article. For our full text, things that we own in full text, that should not be happening. I think I may know where you're coming across this, and if this is not the case, let me know, because it may be something we need to fix with our linking. What should happen when you go our databases is it will ask you to log in with that same SAU login that you use with MySAU and with Blackboard and all that. When you get into our databases and you search, if you have checkmarked the box that says full text, it should only give you back items that are in full text. If you have not checkmarked the full text, you will get a mixed bag of citations of articles for you to discover that maybe we don't have, as well as items we do have in full text. I know that in some of those citations, there's a place that says, help me find this item. And what it will do is link to another resource in the background and see if it can find it in our resources. I think what's happening with some of you is there are times that when it can't find it, it tries to redirect you to, I believe it's a spot in Google Scholar or directly to the provider's website, and that's where it's asking you to pay for the articles. And that, I think, is happening because it believes that we don't have it in full text. And if that's ever the case, especially when it pertains to or when it pertains to journal articles, please feel free to interlibrary loan that. We do not expect you to be paying $45 for a single article. And I think a lot of times you'll notice that, like, if you try to do a Google search, like a Google Scholar search, and pull up articles, it will do the same thing. And what's happening is you're running into places where the publisher, that's the page you've landed on, and it doesn't know that you're part of our institution or our subscription. When we don't subscribe to something, then of course they want payment. But through our interlibrary loan service, we have agreements with other institutions to lend information, and we have copyright laws that allow us to lend certain things in certain ways. So that being said, even though there is a delay with interlibrary loan and getting things, when it comes to articles, more often than not, we're able to usually get it back within just a few days. So if you find that there's an article that you're like, man, this would be perfect for my paper, doesn't look like the library has it in full text, send us that request. And I will go, let me share my screen with you. That's the beauty of this program. I can actually share my screen and show you some things, especially with that question. So let me pop into my desktop here. And if I go out to the library's website, either from this help tab, I can go to interlibrary loan right here. And it's just going to ask you some basic information, your name, your email address, and then you can copy and paste that citation right here and click send, and it will email directly to our interlibrary loan department. Likewise, if you're somewhere else on the website, let's say that you were looking up stuff on citation style guides or some other page, you'll notice that there's these buttons over here to the right, and there's one of them for interlibrary loan requests that one click will take you back to that same point we got to through here. So we have several different links that redundantly take you back to the same place, but it's for ease of access. So whether you go help interlibrary loan or to this button to interlibrary loan, you can do it that way. Oftentimes when you're in the database and it does not find full text, what it will do is instead of routing you to that pay screen, what it usually does is comes back and says request this item via interlibrary loan. That should show up as one of your options, and if that does, if you click that link, you'll be able to fill in the information it asks for. It'll look a bit different than the screen you're seeing right now. Then you'll be able to do the very same thing and send us the request. I will mention that if the item you're looking for is a book, it is always at this point, because of copyright restrictions, it's always going to be sent back in physical form, not ebook, even though you may want an e-copy. Because of copyright restrictions, we aren't currently lending ebooks. So what you would have to do is wait for the physical copy to be shipped to us and then shipped on to you, which is why interlibrary loan books take so long. But we are more than happy to do it, and I certainly don't want to discourage you from it. You will find that feature especially useful when you're in a capstone project and have more time than 7 weeks. So even if you can't use interlibrary loan for books right now because of time constraints, do reach out to us. We're happy to do that. Same thing in our book catalog. If you find a physical book you want that we don't have as an ebook, what we do either with interlibrary loan or our own books is we do pack it up and ship it to you with a postage paid return label so that you can get it back to us without cost. And we also don't ask for cost for postage up front either. So the exchange is at no additional cost to you. So don't let that part of it stop you at all. So I think, unless you guys think otherwise, that's probably, if you're using our services, where you're getting to the pay links. And I will also make a note to myself to see if there's any way we can circumvent that, because certainly we're not encouraging you to pay $45 for an article if you don't have to do that. So I'm going to make a note to myself if we can get that shut off in some way. I don't know why that's starting to happen with some, but perhaps Amy could shed some light on that for us. I wanted to mention too that when you are using, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this, when you are researching ebooks versus articles, both of them live in databases, but they're giving you two different kinds of material. And I'm simply mentioning that because some of the discussion I saw about it almost sounded like people were thinking of them as interchangeably the same thing. I may be mistaken, but I just wanted to draw attention to this so that we understood what the difference was. When you are looking at our resources, if what you're looking for is an ebook, it's literally the physical book turned into digital form. So when you pull it up, and I'll show you an example of this in a minute, you're able to look from cover to cover of that entire book. So it's like your computer is holding the book in its hands for you to flip through, or there's advanced features that you can search through, that you can save, etc. And Rob started to look into this. I saw him comment that he made a My eBrary account, which is fantastic. That's an advanced feature that you are welcome to take advantage of if you wish to do so. It's not required to read the books, but it's certainly useful. The e-journal articles, though, what you're seeing there is, I think some folks, at least some that I've encountered in person, have a little bit of trouble distinguishing what that really means. Like the journal article, they're like, well, am I getting a journal? What am I getting? If you think of when, let's pretend my notebook here. Let's say your favorite home magazine. I'm going to liken it to a magazine. So let's say you get Time magazine at home, right? So when you go to your mailbox. For Time, it's weekly. For other publications, it's monthly. For some, it's every quarter. So you get there and you're like, oh, great, there's a new issue of Time that's just come to me. The issue refers to the entire bound copy, one piece of your subscription. And when you open that up and you start flipping through the pages, you'll see, such and such by this particular author. That's one article out of the entire journal issue. When you are looking at Library Lane and the scholarly sources, it's much like that. It's just that these are scholarly peer-reviewed or scholarly sources. So what you're getting online electronically is you can search by keywords or subjects to find articles that are pulled out of all these different individual issues from all of these different subscriptions. You can look for a specific title and look through an entire issue. Or you can look up a title and look through different years of issues. So what you're seeing is, again, the digitized version of that physical item that you used to receive in your mailbox. So when you are looking for, and I know some of this is reviewing some of your weekly stuff, so please forgive if this is too much repetition, but I'm hoping that this will help clarify some of this. When you're looking for an ebook, ebooks are able to take a topic and it's able to expound on that topic in a lot of detail from cover to cover. When it comes to the journals, oftentimes what it's done is taken a really specific instance that you might find in a book described generally, and it looks at a much more specific research instance. And a lot of times in your master's programs, you're going to be focusing on journals and piecing together your argument based on what others have done. But as far as when you're putting up your own paper and arguments, that may help you think through how do I want to structure my research? Do I need a more broad description of something? That may be from a book. Do I need to find instances where something has been applied and people have gotten results? That's more of a journal. And when it comes to journals, I know there are some questions, understandably, and I definitely want to talk about this. How do I choose which database to search from? And that's always a great question. And sometimes the answer is, it depends, which sucks. Here's the reason that it depends. Let's say you are in a city and you're walking down the street and you see all these different restaurants. The similarity between all these different restaurants is the fact that, hey, all these different restaurants serve food, but they serve different kinds of food, and you have to decide what's on your palate for that particular day. The databases are like that in a lot of ways. They all serve up articles to you, or in the case of ebooks, they serve up books. They serve up research material. But depending on what you need at the time depends on what you want to go for. For instance, as a communications major, it sounds really obvious at first that, well, maybe what I need to focus in is communications. But because your major is very interdisciplinary, there are times when you find yourself needing to access both communications databases and business databases, because maybe you're looking at how social media impacts a corporation. Your communications databases are going to be looking at that topic from a communication social media point of view. Business will also talk about those impacts, but from the perspective of a business. And each one of those databases has its own little pool of data. Some things overlap and some are independent. So that being said, it sometimes helps to kind of dip into different databases and see what you get. When we look at, if I go to search and then articles, and I'm looking at this set of things that's presented to me, up here, it gives you some specific subjects to choose from. So if what you are looking to do is choose a specific discipline, such as communications, you can click on that discipline and see a list of databases that is their primary focus. Likewise, if I back up a page and look at that list again, you can do that with other topics. Down here, OmniFile, Full Text, and InfoTrack are generalized databases. So they have a pool of data that has a mix of different things. They're kind of more just liberal arts generalized in nature. So there's nothing wrong with using these, but if you're looking for something with more of a concentration, this may be your way to go, is up here with these. That being said, one tool that I personally like, and everybody's got their own point of view on this, so test it out and see what you think. But I really do like to play with Search Everything. Search Everything is a different monster all by itself. What it does is it allows us, the library, to tell it, here's what we subscribe to. And I can go into the Search Everything interface, and I can search through the majority of our collection from across different disciplines, as well as books, all at one time. Now, I still use the books and media links separately for books. But that being said, you're going to get a large number of titles back. And the reason I like Search Everything is especially when you're researching an interdisciplinary topic, such as, like we talked about with communications and business, like social media and business. It allows you to see a bunch of different perspectives at one time. And then you can start to see, oh, well, this is more business focused. This one's more communications focused. So if you want to switch to a subject specific database, you can. If you want to stay where you are, you can do that too. But in any of those databases, you're given what's called limiters to limit the scope of the search to help you out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with that a little bit and show you some differences between what you're getting back to kind of give you an idea the kinds of results you get back. And I would encourage you that no matter the number of results, because you might try it in one database and it comes back with very few results, but another one gives you a lot. And that has everything to do with the pool of data that's behind that search interface. Right now, I know everybody's looking forward to finding out what topic they're going to research. We're waiting on 2 more results to come in. So whichever comes first, either those last 2 results coming in or Sunday at 11:59, I'll be posting the official result. Right now, the one with the highest votes is social media and relationships. So I'm going to play with that a little bit online tonight just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. And then if it turns out that that's your research topic, hey, you got a jump start. And if not, well, you kind of got an idea of where you're going with this. So for example, if I want to go the subject specific route and I want to go, let's scroll this up so you can actually see it. If I would go to search and then articles, like you would from any spot on our website, I can come down here to communication. And perhaps what I want to start with is communication and mass media complete from EBSCO. And when I click that, this is the point that it's going to ask me to prove that I'm part of the university so that it will let you in or not to our resources. And if you ever have problems logging in, let me know. I appreciate those of you who have reached out and mentioned the issues. We've had a couple different issues. I hope I'm saying your name right. Lucia, her particular issue happened to be that she lives outside of the United States, and she happened to be from a country that we've had trouble with spam. So she was blocked, and because she reached out to me, we were able to fix that. For another individual, it sounded like they were having security certificate issues, which is probably on our end updating some things. So always let us know if there's something that's funny and it's not letting you in. We're more than happy to get you in there because we want you to be able to do this. At the same time, I've got this communication and mass media complete open in this window. I'm also going to pop search everything open so that we can kind of see the difference between the two. This search everything is also, the interface is provided by EBSCO as well. So you're going to see a lot of similarities between the two. They're searching different pools of data in the background, I assure you, and we're going to illustrate that here in a minute. So based on some things that you may have already seen, and I imagine most of you have since I can see you've been really active in working through things this week. If I want to just start with the generic search and see just what's out there about this social media and relationships, I may start by putting social media and quotation marks. You'll see that it's starting to give me some suggestions, which I can either take their suggestion or I can do it separately. And I might suggest you just do it separately. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the asterisk because that's going to give it the option of finding the word relationship. It also is going to give it the option of finding relationships. This is an example of that truncation feature that's in this week's lesson. What this tells the database is it says this first prefix, in this case an entire word, has to appear just like this, and then where the star is, there can either be no additional letter here or there can be a variety of endings that comes after this. So if, for example, if relationshiping was a word, it could pick that. But in this case, we've got relationship and relationships, plural, that it can pick up both of this. The quotations you may recall from Ruth Gaba's video keep the phrase together. So instead of social media without quotations, it could find social appear in the title and media down here in the context, and that would be okay. But when we put quotations around it, we're instructing the database that they have to appear side by side as a phrase. They can't appear in 2 separate locations and still be a valid result. If it happens to be that way in the article, that's fine, but it has to at least find it once with it side by side with that for it to return those results to you. Now, a few things. The full text option, I'm going to encourage you to use sparingly. At this point, when you are doing your 7-week courses and you've got to find things in a hurry and they all need to be full text, it's totally fine to use it. But my caution is simply because when you get into your capstone, check marking the full text will exclude anything that gives you just a citation with no full text, and you may need to discover some of those things. For example, let's say a seminal article in your field was written in 1982, and the full text was never digitized, and of course it wasn't born digital back then. You would completely miss out on that entry because you had marked full text, and it would have kicked those out of the results because it didn't have that attachment with it. So you may want to consider leaving that unchecked in future days when you're doing really advanced research. But for now, I'm going to check mark it so that we can kind of compare apples to apples between this and the search everything. I'm also going to, just for fun, I'm going to limit this, whoops, didn't mean to blow it up like that. And we are going to limit this to the last 5 years to keep the results current. And we can do that in EBSCO databases real easily by telling it a date range we want it to keep within. And finally, I'm also going to tell it scholarly or peer-reviewed journals. And the great thing about this checkbox is that it weeds out for you anything that doesn't have this qualifier. So if what you are needing to go for is only things that have been vetted by that author's peers, and you have likely, for those of you who had 504 first, you may have seen some instructions like that already. It's a great way to check it off and pull just those. Now, it won't be letting you see the trade journals within your field, so if there's an assignment where you need trade journals, you'll want to leave that unchecked. For now, we're going to do that, and I'm going to just perform this basic search. Meanwhile, over here, and while that's searching, I'm going to go to search everything and set up the same thing. So you'll see we're doing social media in quotes and relationship with a star. We're also going to be doing the peer-reviewed over here. It's off to the side. Full text over here, and we're going to do the same limiter of 2011 to 2016 and press search. I'll let it search, and I'm coming back over here to communication and mass media complete. You can see up here that that's the database we're in. And it's told us that of all the things it has access to, there were 200 articles that had those specific terms we entered that also qualified as full text in the last 5 years and were scholarly peer reviewed. And so we can easily take a look at these things by clicking on the title. And one of the great things I will encourage you to do is to take a look at the subject terms to get an idea. Let's say you look at this and you're like, wow, this is the perfect article for whatever it is I'm researching. The subject terms can give you some really great insights into not only the terms to use, but later on when you start combining, what we're doing right now is keyword searching. This gives you exact phrasing in this database for a label that was put on this to pull exact material with that subject. You don't have to worry so much right now about subject searching, but certainly I would be happy to talk with you about refining your searches where you're combining subject terms and keyword. My biggest impetus right now is just to get you comfortable getting in there and using this. But if you ever want to understand better how to combine subject and keyword, I'd be happy to get into that. But certainly skim this for additional terms, and also your abstract is a great place to pull terms, because sometimes what you and I would use in our daily vernacular to talk about a topic isn't the same as what the industry calls it. So when we start searching, we start with what we know. And then as we get into the research, we start to discover a few more things that we go, oh, I might want to swap these words, or I may want to include this in the search somehow with our and, or, and not. I might want to say social media or perhaps sociability, if that's applicable to your search at the time. That's a place where that or would come in handy, because you're telling it either sociability or social media is going to be a valid return for me in conjunction with these other results. But the great thing about abstracts is you can kind of preview. So out of these 200 results, you're looking at this and you're going, oh, okay, so this is generally what this is about. This is a good way for me to quickly vet whether or not I want to spend time downloading or printing or any of those things with the article. Doesn't replace the full text, unfortunately, but it does help us kind of process through them a little more quickly. In EBSCO databases, you'll see when we've got that full text, there's a link off to the side. This is PDF full text. There was also a link back here in our results that showed us that there was a PDF full text, which we can click from here also if we didn't want to read through all the abstract stuff. And when I click that, either one, is going to pull up that PDF here in our screen. In this particular case, it's telling me there's 21 pages. Let me move this little guy over so I can show you some more things. I can either use this arrow right here to download it to my computer. For those of you who would rather have print, that's entirely fine too. You can hit the print button here. I would recommend using this one. This one usually takes you to a funny place. Use the one that's in this gray window right here. Another really great thing about this too is some of you have discovered that there is this little citation tool. This is my warning about this in every database, and I can't say this enough. Feel free to use these as a tool only. Do not use these as gospel, because more often than not, they may pull the information and put them in the right order, but sometimes there will be extra information inserted. Sometimes they won't format it correctly, like some things are uppercase that shouldn't be, and the reverse of that is true. For example, when I look at this reference citation, and you'll eventually be able to recognize these things too as you do this APA more and more, this title is done incorrectly. And I can tell you this because this is the title of the journal article itself, not the journal. And when you're doing article titles, the only thing that's capitalized is the first word after punctuation. So this would be capitalized as well. And then any proper nouns would be capitalized. Otherwise, this should all be lowercase. With this, where it says Journal of Broadcasting and Electronic Media, it's fine that it's stylized with the ampersand, but the O and of would be lowercase, and the rest of it would be capitalized like you would with a regular title. So this is an example of, hey, we can find our APA citation. Feel free to pull it and to help yourself, but always compare it to your rule book so that you don't end up getting docked. Some professors are more lenient than others where this is concerned, but especially when you get into publication and that kind of thing, you definitely want to be concerned with that sort of thing. Likewise, let's go back over. We talked real quickly about the subject-specific database, and you probably remember that we said there were 200 results with that specific combination in there. But when I flip over to search everything, you will see that because we searched the majority of our collection at once, we came back with over 20,000 results. And this certainly underscores why switching database pools makes a big difference in what we retrieve back. So how does this help you in terms of choosing a database? I would say that if you're really lost on what topic you want to focus in on, like in this case, social media and relationships, you may say to yourself, I kind of want to stick with the social media side of things and with communication. That's totally fine. But if you want to see how it intersects with something else like business, like maybe something specific with, maybe you're somebody who's doing something with the music industry and you want to take a look at how it intersects with that. That could be business or that could be music. Certainly feel free to dip into different databases. But to me, when it comes to trying to get an idea of what database is showing what, going to search everything is helpful because not only can it show me a breadth of information, but when I take a look at these citations, you can usually see at the very end of this little line, for example, this is Database Business Source Elite, which is a business database. The second one, when your smartphone is too smart for your own good, how social media alters human relationships. I am not seeing the database listed here, but we do see that it's from Journal of Individual Psychology, so it's likely coming from some of the tech databases. So feel free to ask us for recommendations. Feel free to dip into the different databases. Right now, you may want to start with your communications databases, and if you find that you're branching into some of these other areas, feel free to play with any of those that you want to. Is that making sense so far? Do people have questions at this point? I know this is a whole lot to be talking about all at one time.
Yeah, the little star thing, I guess I overlooked that, but that's going to be very helpful. You know, relationships, whatever, with other words, whatever you end up using.
Yeah, I really enjoy one sample that I do with some of my nursing students where we're using an acronym, and the acronym has changed forms a number of times. I won't force you through the entire search because it's a long one for that assignment, but what it has to do with, it begins to talk about, it's in an ethics course, and it's talking about ethically how a nurse would handle a patient coming to them with concerns about transgender issues. And so one of the things that we talk about is the fact that we've traditionally seen, and this is speaking to your comment about truncation, Rob.
Okay.
For example, we've seen LGBT as one common abbreviation. But as you research, you see that EBSCO also has GLBT. And then you also see LGBTQ. You've also seen it QA, and then another A. So one of the ways you can capture that with a combination of both the truncation and the and or thing is you can say LGBT star to capture all of those different variations. And then you can say or GLBT star so that you capture all of that in one search instead of conducting a search for each one of those acronyms, as well as the alternate acronyms that you found. And you'll find that you'll find this to be useful too as you start to get into different things with your research and communications as well. Whether it's women's issues, you can do women with a star to capture women and women's, the plural. This is a little less common, but in some databases, because women and woman changes just one letter, there's the question mark you can put in to represent exactly one letter changing. So it knows that it has to find it as either woman or women, and with the star that allows it to add on the S at the end. So there's some fun things you can do with this to actually help simplify it. It sounds harder, but once you get used to it, it's actually really super helpful in helping you to instruct the database on what you want it to do. And I can't encourage that enough. When it comes to limiters, don't look at it like something scary. Look at it as a way for you to take control of what's here. I mentioned before that when you have this big number, there's ways for you to play with it. And if you look down this left-hand side, there are additional limiters we can tell it. So even though this doesn't look like much to begin with, in terms of limiters, you see we started at over 20,000. So something I can do is I can tell it that you only want academic journals. So you want to kick out the reviews, you want to kick out trade pubs, books, and reports. So if I check mark academic journals, it's going to drop me to that 19,694. It's not a big difference, but that's a start. And now I can start to say, you know what, I only want to look at articles that pertain to, social media, the United States, and that kind of thing. Maybe I'm not looking overseas, just to throw an example out there. Now, keep in mind that not every article is going to have a geography tag on it, but for those that are, and for the sake of just trying to narrow down what you're doing, I can come through here and check mark anything that has to do with the United States. So if it's a separate state, I can check mark it, et cetera, et cetera. And just in this instance, there's more to review. Just in this instance, by check marking these three, now we've gone from over 19,000 to 1,609 because we kicked out ones that either didn't have a geography label or had another country's geography label as its primary focus of location. And if at any time, maybe you look at that and you're like, wow, I really lost a lot. I really wish I hadn't done that. Over here, it says refine results and current search. I can come over here and click the X next to these things that I added in. At first, it's going to get smaller because I just took out that one and it's focused on these two. But then once I get rid of all three, it's going to take me right back to that. Here's the third one. And there it is. We're back to our 19,000 results that we had after we limited down to just journal articles. So it really does, even though it looks intimidating for a lot of people to start with, it actually puts you in control of what it shows you. One other little tip I'll show you too that's really great. You've probably learned that in the course of research, that if you get up and walk away from your computer, of course it times out after a while, and that's a real pain. But while you're in your research session, I'm in EBSCO, here's this little spot that says search history. And if I click on where it says search history, it will take me to a place where it will show me the different combinations I've done and the limiters. And if I look over here to the right-hand side, we'll see where it says view results. Here's my original set of results. And then here's my results for that second one that I ran. If I want to go back to this one, all I have to do is click on view results and it returns me back to where I was. Now, one more thing, and I know this is yet another advanced tip. So if you need me to explain this to you at any time, just ask me, hey, what was that thing about permalinks? Permalinks are your friend. I want to first say that your permalink does not come from up here. This is the link that if you look right here, it says session manager. Session manager means this is eventually going to time out. This is the link that says, hey, this person is a valid user of the university, but if you go away and you're away for like say 30 minutes, it's like, well, we don't know if that valid user is there anymore, and it drops your connection. What you want, let's say that you got to pick up the kids at soccer practice at 5:30 and it's 5:15 and you want to remember where this was. So whether you are an email user or a Word user, whatever is your favorite thing to do, come over here in EBSCO to where it says share. Click drop down. It says use permalink, persistent link to search, copy and paste. I can click in this lovely box, right click and say copy. And if I am, let's say I want to email this to myself so I've got record of it, I can come over here to my handy little SAU email. And when I load up my email address, or I'm sorry, my email account rather, I can open up a brand new email to myself. And I can say, I really want to remember what that was all about. And I'm just going to say, search, oops, it would help if I was in my subject box. Let's move this over so you can see. And I can say, search. And I can paste, Control V, puts that right down in here, and I can send it to myself. So now I can go get the kids, I can go cook dinner, I can do whatever I want. And then let's say 8 o'clock comes back, I can come back here and I can click this link. And at this point, because it's not timed out, it's sending you straight through. But this is where I would ask you to log in, because that permalink routes you through the right place to sign you back in. And you can see that it's regenerated my search again with the same search. I put them all in one box. You can see the and is capitalized. That's because that's how it is a command to tell itself that it's a Boolean operator. But it puts it all in one box, it reruns your search, and it keeps the limiters you had on it before. So now I can go back to what I was doing again. If you are in the article itself, and you're like, I didn't really want to keep the entire article, the entire search, but what I wanted was to keep that singular article, you can either download the full text. So, I can click on that PDF full text. I can come over here, and when it loads, I can hit that download button. And you'll see that it's asking me where I want to save it. Do whatever works for you as far as that is concerned. Whether it's to put it on your desktop, make a folder, whatever the case may be. I'm going to say save. So now I've got that to print out later or to read online later, whichever works for me. Alternately, if what you want is to do this all at one time, maybe you're in a place where you can't really print or you don't have a thumb drive with you and you're at a public computer, you can come again. This one has a permalink in the file record for just that article. And you do the same thing. You click on permalink. Remember, site was up here. Permalink is just a few clicks lower. And I can do the same thing where I click in the box, right click, and say copy, and I can go back to my email and do the same thing where all I'm doing is sending myself the link to that article. That way, again, I'm not reinventing what I was doing from scratch. And you'll see again that it pops up right here. And when I click that link, it sends me straight through to the record for that article I wanted. So there's some ways to kind of play with it to make it work for you. I want to make sure I leave time for some questions. I want to close a few windows here because I know I've got about 1 million open. I also mentioned real quickly about ebooks. And I think when you're first getting started, one of the best ways to look for books, any books, including ebooks, is to start with books and media, because this is a form of database that allows you to search all of our books at one time. And what you can do as a distance learner, if all you want is ebooks, is instead of starting your search from here, which you can do, but you're going to get a mix of everything, both physical and electronic. Come over here to this kind of a manila colored box on my screen. And if I click advanced search, it looks more complicated, but it's really not. So I can enter the search terms here. And this may be too specific because books only have a very brief entry that they can search through. But if it is too advanced, we can back it off and then search within an ebook. So I put in social media in relationship with a star like we did in the catalog. And now I go down to location and I specifically click ebooks. So what you're telling, this is another kind of limiter like we just did in the databases. You're kicking out everything that is just a physical, like it links back to a physical item that has a location on the shelf. And you're telling it, I only want the stuff that I can access right now. And you can see that with the criteria I gave it, it gave me back 16 total results. And for example, this first one, managing the new customer relationship strategies to engage, blah, blah, blah. It says ebook and it has no call number because it has no physical location. So if I click on this title, much like the article, you've got this introductory information that's got your subject. But with the reason sometimes books are trickier to locate is because we've got to go real basic with the language, and then we can search inside of the ebooks to find specific topics, because this is all it has access to when it's searching that area. If I click Access Book Online, it's going to open a new window, and in this case, it's ProQuest eBrary is where this one's located. Most of our collection is in ProQuest eBrary when it comes to ebooks, but we do have some overlays for ebooks, which is why my suggestion is to start with our book catalog so you can search both simultaneously. So when I get in here, this is where that wonderful My eBrary comes in handy if you want to use some of the more advanced features. From here, with your regular login, all you have to do is click Read Online, and it's going to change your interface so that you can read the book, if you wish, cover to cover, right here in this reading pane. But you've also got the options to look at the table of contents, because you might have noticed that with some research books, what you really need is just a chapter out of it, because it's like a compilation of different topics, and you just need that one chapter. So you can see right here, teaching customers new behaviors. Let's say this is what you needed. I can click on that title and it will jump me straight to that particular area, and I can read just this chapter if I like. I can also, something else I can do here that you can't with physical books, is I can put in social media so I can see where it talks about this in the book. If you can do the quotation marks. If you find, I've had some mixed success with quotation marks within the eBrary search feature. So if you try it with quotes and it doesn't work, try it one more time without the quotes. But when it repopulates your table of contents, you'll see that there are varying lengths of purple bars, and that's indicating to you the bigger the bar, the more times that phrase showed up. So if I click on teaching customers new behaviors, I see that, hey, they've got this once on 227 and 427. When I get to page 227, oops, I went too far. Let's do that again. It only found the word social, but it highlighted where it found it. So let's try this again, and let's run it with the quotations. And this one does suggest to search for an exact phrase, use quotes. So I suppose that when it didn't work, that may have been an issue with the way that that particular book had been programmed as passable. You can see now we dropped down to 86 results. So if I scroll through here again, here's this in chapter 4. On page 107, that phrase shows up once, but it shows up 11 times on 108. So if I click on this and I start to scroll through my results, you can see every place that it located my requested terms. And so now I can read in context of everything around it to see if that's something I want to focus my time on. So that's a really fun way for you to quickly find out whether or not what you have is what you really wanted in the first place. One of the things Rob was talking about in his post was when you click the sign in feature, you can create some space. So if you find yourself using ebooks a lot and you find that most of yours are in ProQuest, something great you can do with this is, for example, you can use the highlight feature. So let's say that I was like, oh, wow, this is a really great point. Let's highlight this. And when I come back to my book later, like if I go to my bookshelf, let's see if it caught this already. Here we go. So it's saying, hey, you highlighted something over here in this book. Let's go back and take a look at that piece that I was working on. The reason for the account then is so that you can save customized content. So if you want to save books to your bookshelf, you're like, oh wow, this looks like a great book, but I want to come back and read it later. You can certainly then, save that to your bookshelf. You can also do things like we just did. There is, I believe, an annotate feature. Here's an add note feature. So maybe I might say, great point for page 15 of my research, just to kind of draw my attention to it. And so now it's marked that page with a little note. And again, when I go to my bookshelf, you can see it's starting to accumulate different notes and things I made to myself on this book. And now I can click on those specific items to go back and see what it was I wanted to draw my attention to later. In the case of this note, I believe, there we go. All I have to do is click on that little note mark and it pops my note back out to me. So those are some great reasons that you might want to actually use that particular feature. One more look at my notes to make sure I didn't miss. The only other thing, yeah, I think that covers most of it, except somebody had specifically asked about reviewing and vetting sources on the internet. We have a handout that goes over some of those things. One of the great things that is helpful with the database is being able to check mark that peer reviewed, to be able to winnow it down. But there's a lot of things when you go out, for example, on the open web, to consider when you are deciding whether or not something is worth your time. I have a handout I can provide a link to, and I will do that in the announcements so that you can review it. It's like a 6-page handout just to give you some ideas. So feel free to skim it, come back to it. But one of the things you want to think about is the group that posted this, do they have a bias? So is what they're reporting going to be slanted in some way, and is that appropriate for my research that I'm trying to do? Do they have the authority to talk about this topic? So for example, American Medical Association has some really good authority to be talking about lung cancer, but they would not be a good one to talk about the effects of social media on a communications project. So if you're looking up something medical and it's a related group, you know, that's another indication that it could be a good source to use. Check out the copyright date, make sure it's current. Something that hasn't been updated since '07, unless it's historical, is probably not going to be much good. That's another point that we look at. Taking a look at the author's authority. When you see an author posted that has credentials listed after his or her name, that's helpful in helping you vet those things. So those are some of the key points we mentioned, but there's a whole list of them that you'll want to take a look at. But in short, a great way to do that with your articles is to check that peer-reviewed box to help you winnow it down. And then as you get more familiar with kind of doing a quick review process on those things when you're going on the free web, it will help you a great deal in the long run. I'm going to stop talking so that you guys have a moment to ask the questions before we have to close our hour. I'm certainly willing to go beyond an hour if you have more questions, but I want to keep it to that hour as I promised all of you.
Would you recommend using Google Scholar or kind of as a last resort for anything then?
My answer is a mixed one on this one. Google Scholar can be great for a lot of things. For example, sometimes when you are having trouble figuring out what terms to use in the databases, because maybe you're plugging things in the database and you're like, nothing is working. Google Scholar can be a great place that we use our everyday syntax and throw some things at it and see what's starting to come up. And then you might start to see some patterns and some terms that help you go back to the database with.
Okay. Sometimes
Google Scholar is also good. They're doing better at pulling more scholarly sources, but they are going to direct you to those pay sites like we were talking about before, because
I noticed.
Yeah. And so what you can do then is use our journal title search to see whether or not we own it. And that is something I wanted to point out to you guys. I'm glad we're talking about that. So for instance, one of the titles I think that came up, let's see if I can find this in my notes real quick. Okay. So someone had mentioned that they were trying to find, for example, communication in medicine, and they didn't think we happened to have it. Let me show you something about that.
That was me.
Okay. So if you go to search and you drop down to where it says journals, think of it like a reverse search for a phone number. You know, like when somebody calls your phone, you're like, who in the world is this? I've got the final answer, but I don't know where it came from. So journals kind of let you do that too. You've got this information about a resource, but you don't know where it came from. You don't know what to do with it. So you can come to this and you can type in your title, communication and medicine. And when I press enter, it tells me whether or not there are results. And in this case, it shows me this first result. And it says full text access. So when I press this plus, it tells me that we have subscription access in 2 locations, but there's something important to notice about this. For communication and mass media complete, it says we have it from 2004 to September of 01 of 2007. For ProQuest Health Management, however, we have it from 2011 to the present. So we do have a gap in our coverage from September of 07 to Jan 1 of 2011. So if it's in between these years, we won't have access to it. But if what you want is, say, the last 5 years, I can click on ProQuest Health Management. And there's a couple of things I can do with this at this point. So I'm like, all right, this is awesome. I can get into this journal. So now what can I do with it? If you know specifically the article you want, You can search for part of the title right here. If you want to go to a specific issue, you can click next to the year and you can go to a specific issue. Now, something we try to do, and I can see that there is an issue that needs to be fixed right here. It says 11 to the present, but when we get into the database, it's only showing to 2014. This could be indicative of either a lapse in coverage, so maybe we don't have 15 and 16, or it could be an embargo. We try to make notation of that in this list, and if you come across that, certainly let us know so that we can fix it, and this is one that needs fixed. But what an embargo means is, from the date of its publication, whether it's the publisher or the author, somebody's put a restriction on it that it is not available to us in full text that number of times. So for example, if this is an embargo of 13 months, that means the most recent item that we would have from that particular provider would be, let's see, if we go back a year and then a month, this is May of 16, so May of 15, April of 15, so we would probably have March of 2015 on back. That's what we would have. But you would be able to discover the citations forward. We just wouldn't have the full text. So for communication in medicine, you can see we've got these two results here that we can go to. We have full text access for those issues. Back to the other comment about this, though, once I've pulled up a specific title, I mentioned you can search for part of a title of an article. You can search for a topic in here. You can also come down here and look at a specific volume and issue. So maybe I want 2013, and maybe what I was after was an article that was in the volume 10 issue 2. And when I click on that, it populates a list. Sometimes it takes a moment, as you can see. But it populates a list of all of the PDF items it has available. And generally speaking, this is a list of all of the things available. But what you'll find is somebody observed that this is not a table of contents. That's correct. This is not necessarily, it may be the same as the table of contents, and it may not be. For example, you'll sometimes see where there's an insert, a feature inserted, where it's like a paragraph that's in a box. Some of them have done well at putting its own index out here for you to discover. Some of them is buried within here. So if you happen to know that it was like page 113, you can pull up this PDF and find it in this one. But this is the list of all of the PDFs that are available to you from this issue. And generally speaking, it's the entirety of the volume, unless there's been some kind of a restriction where they've excluded it. That kind of makes sense?
Yep.
What other questions do you guys have at this time?
I had a question on the alphabet journals that are available. Is there like a key tab or something? Like the one I have access through my work, you just click on A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or A through B, C through D, an alphabetized list of all the journals that you have access to. How do you find that? You said that you are able to search by the journal listing.
If you're looking for a specific, are you talking about a specific journal title or a specific database?
Journal title.
Okay.
Like communication, yes, anything.
Okay. If what you want, we don't have an A to Z list like you're talking about with start to finish, because there's a lot of, for example, EBSCO, we may get a package where there's thousands of titles of a particular, thousands of journal titles over here that we subscribe to. So we don't have those. What we do have an A to Z list of library databases, but when it comes to journal titles, what you're going to want to do is that search and then journals and then look for the specific journal that you're after. So you were talking about communication and what?
Well, I'm trying to throw out an example of a specific journal, and I'm drawing a blank, but
okay, something else that's
without having to scroll through every listing to find a journal that began with the letter J, I guess. But yeah, it's just to help speed.
Let's try this. I'm trying something here to see what happens. I think there's usually an option that says begins with, and I'm trying to find that for you real quick. And if I don't find it right away, I can certainly look for it. It seems to me in the past there was something else here, and I know they changed this database. Something it does do, it's not specifically what you were asking for, but it does allow you to browse by discipline. So if you wanted to come down here specifically to communication and mass media, you can click on this link, and it says that there's 946 results. A lot of these are databases. I'm sorry, a lot of these are journal titles, but there are some others mixed in here. So for example, on the left side, under resource type, if what you're wanting to browse is journals specifically, you can check mark that box. And you can kind of thumb through the 768 communication-specific titles in alphabetical order. So this is probably the closest thing we have to that alphabetical list that you're asking about. But in terms of being able to just come up with a list of everything, I don't think that we do. Another useful thing to do, though, is from this list, we went down to communications. You can also limit by specifically peer-reviewed journals. And now we're down to 449. So this entire list, if you wanted to just browse peer-reviewed journals, you can do that here too.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You betcha. Anything else, guys?
I'm sure we'll have a bunch of questions later.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm here for. I expect it. So be sure to throw them my way when you have them. I know sometimes you don't get them until you're in there and you're practicing it. So.
Exactly.
And I know too, when it's like, go ahead.
I'm happy until I'm on there working, and then I'll have like 10 million questions.
Completely fair. Completely fair. All right, guys, if there aren't any more questions this time, I'll cut you loose so that you can go back and enjoy your day. It looks like good weather, at least here anyway. Hopefully you've got good weather where you are too. And I will try to make this particular presentation available to you guys sooner rather than later, so that you guys can go back through it if you like. And if you've got any questions, again, feel free to hit me up and let me know what questions you do have, okay?
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. All right. Have a great night, guys.